Hello, hello, and welcome everyone to our transformational talks today. This is Saeed, joined by my colleague Annegret and Nikita, representing Coach Transformation Academy, a globally recognized coach training and mentoring institute accredited by the ICF, IMC, EMCC, and SHRM. If you'd like to learn more about our programs, we will be sharing our contact email in the chat shortly. Please feel free to reach out to us. To ensure you receive an ICF, one CCE, and one IMC MDC, kindly remain on the camera for the next 60 minutes, please. Participation certifications will be issued by Friday. Our speaker for today, Janine Esbrand, founder of Career Change Makers, dedicated to helping high achievers and find career fulfillment and supporting companies in developing emerging leaders. Janine, a very warm welcome to you. We're delighted to have you with us.
Hello.
Over to you.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me today. I am so excited to see all of your lovely faces here on today's call. I am going to be talking to you today about podcasting and how you can use it to amplify your business and grow your coaching business and reach. So I'm going to share my screen with you and presentation, and we will get started. There will be moments where I ask for some interaction. So as you are here, be fully present so you can get the most out of today's session. If, as I'm going through, you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat and there will be time towards the end of the presentation for Q&A. Okay. Can we all see this? Yes. Good. Let me just get the chat up so I have that. All right. So before we get started, I'd love to know from everybody if you could just type in the chat one word to describe how you are feeling today. How are you showing up? How are we joining the call? One word to describe your mood so I can just gauge the room. Fabulous, curious, caffeinated, love it. Feeling good, great, excited. Okay, so we've got all the positives. So that is fantastic. Grounded, energetic, wonderful. Okay. Let's get started. So what we're going to cover today, I'm going to talk to you about how podcasting can help you stand out as a coach, and then share with you some practical strategies for attracting clients through your podcast and how increased visibility can lead to business growth. Does that sound good to everyone? Yeah? Excellent. All right. So let's start from where I started. So I was introduced, and you know that I am a coach. And I do work with individuals around career development, and I also work with organizations to help them to develop programs that impact their emerging leaders. But that's not where I started my career. I decided when I was about 8 years old that I wanted to be a lawyer, and it came off of the back of a conversation with my mum. She basically said that I was very argumentative, and I said I was opinionated, but I mean semantics. But she said because I had an answer for everything, I should become a lawyer. And so I took that seed that she planted then and I pursued the path to become a lawyer. It wasn't easy. It was quite a challenging journey, but I got there. And in 2012, I was admitted to the role of solicitors here in the UK. And I was really excited about that because it was a long journey. But just before I had the opportunity to qualify, I had a chance to go on a mission trip. So I went on a mission trip to East Africa, and we went, it was a group of lawyers from Australia and from the UK, and we went to support in different areas where we were helping local people with access to justice. So we went into prisons and we supported prisoners with understanding their rights. So prisoners who had just been put in jail and put on remand and not had any legal representation. And then we also went into villages and we were teaching people about child protection rights and teaching families about making sure that children get an education. And this picture was taken where we were helping this lady here who's got her hand up. We were helping her to render her house. So the whole village came together, we got to help, and we were on the ground just helping her. She was a widow, she was by herself, and the community came together to support her. So we went for 2 weeks, but it felt like 2 months because we did a lot. And what happened is I came back from that experience And there was a little bit of cognitive dissonance because I was on track to become this big corporate lawyer working on multi-million pound transactions and doing a lot of work behind the scenes on a day-to-day basis, drafting documents, sending documents, chasing documents. And I was sitting at my desk once I got back and I thought, this just feels weird. Like 2 weeks ago, I was on the ground helping people. I could see the impact and how I was helping someone on a one-to-one basis. I was either in a prison, I was in a village, but I was really making a difference. And now I know I'm making a difference, but it feels very removed. Like I'm working on this transaction, but I want to know how I can help people on more of a personal level. And that's where my journey into coaching began. I went on an exploration to see what could I do alongside my legal career that would allow me to help people on a personal level. And I came across this world of coaching and I realized that there was an opportunity for me to really help people in different ways. And so I decided that I would take a coaching certification alongside my legal career, and that's where it all started for me. And after I did my certification, then I was like, okay, so how do I work with people? Like, I want to work with people. I want to find the people that I can help. How do I go about doing it? And when you are, as you all know, getting started with growing a coaching business, it's often the case that it's like, which way do I go? Where do I start? Because I'm coming from a very structured environment. Becoming a lawyer has a very laid out path. You know, you have to go to law school and you have to get a training contract and then you qualify and then you work a few years and then you get promoted and then you keep working until you become partner. And now I'm trying to build a coaching practice on the side and there's not really any rules to it. People are like, yeah, you can get clients this way, you can get clients that way. So many options. You can blog. So I started, this is back in, let's cast our minds back. This is back in 2016, around that time, 2015. I did my certification in 2014. So around 2016 is when I was trying to figure out how to get started. So blogging was a big thing back then. There was social media, there was advertising, there was word of mouth, and then there was podcasting. So I started with blogging. And what I found is I talk faster than I write. I find it easier to articulate what I'm saying by voice than I do writing. So I started blogging and I thought, you know what, this is taking a very long time. It's taking a long time for me to do the writing and then to find the images and then to do the SEO and do all of that. But I like talking. So what about doing a podcast? And so that is where my journey into podcasting began. I really saw it as a marketing tool. I saw it as the one thing that I would do to try and grow my reach and my business. And so I started with podcasting. I'd love to know in the chat before I continue, what is your main method right now for marketing? It might not fall within these categories because, you know, I'm talking about years ago. So right now, what do you do to grow your practice? So I've got word of mouth. What else? LinkedIn, networking events, social media and podcasting. Amazing, Carmen. Emails, LinkedIn, recommendations. Awesome. So we've got a range. We have got a range. Nothing yet, Julie. Okay. Wonderful, wonderful. So I really do think it is important for you to look at the different ways that you can market your business and ultimately find the method that is most aligned to what works for you as a person. You want to find a method that you're going to commit to, that you can do, and hopefully that you enjoy, because I mean, we're building our own businesses. So let's try and build them in a way that works for us as individuals. So what I really liked about podcasting is that there's a low barrier to entry. Like I had no idea what I was doing. I was just committed to the journey. So when I got started, I did a lot of research. I found out different ways that I could get started, the most easiest way that I could get started. And I just got going. And I figured I'm not going to be good at this from the beginning. I'm going to figure it out as I go. And that's my encouragement to all of you. If there's anyone here who's thinking about starting a podcast and you're put off by the fact that it feels like it's a lot and it's a big thing, just know that nobody's listening in the first few episodes anyway. So you have time to figure out how to make it better. When we think about the coaching industry, it's huge, right? We're all in this industry, entering this industry. We've been in it for a while, but it has experienced rapid growth over the last few years. So right now, I think we're looking at around a $7 billion industry in 2025. And between 2019 and 2023, the profession saw a 54% increase in the number of coaches worldwide. That's a huge jump in the number of people that are moving into the coaching space. And I am a huge fan of coaching. Obviously, I'm a coach. I always have a coach. I think it's an amazing, amazing way for people to get the type of support and development that they need to grow and develop. But knowing that the profession has grown so much, it means for us as coaches, we really have to think about and be intentional about how we're marketing the services that we have so that we can attract the clients that we want to attract. And as we think about the current landscape, you know, over the last couple of years with the introduction of AI, what we're seeing is a lot more coaches are relying on AI and other tools to support content creation and thought leadership, which is absolutely fine. But the challenge that that presents for us is over time, certain things sound very similar to the potential end user. It's like, how, if I'm looking for a coach, how do I differentiate between this coach and that coach? If I'm looking for an executive coach or a career coach, or I'm looking for a business coach, everyone's saying the same thing. So like, how do I differentiate? And this is why I really, really love podcasting, because it gives you the opportunity to create long form content that allows people to really get to know who you are as a coach, what your style is and your voice. And that is what can attract people a lot easier and a lot quicker than, say, posting on social media on a daily basis. So we're thinking about like the sea of coaches that there are, like how do we become the red person? How do we make sure that we are standing out to our ideal client, right? To the person that we want to be speaking to. And so I really think about podcasting in terms of these 3 Ps and how they can support us in making sure that our ideal audience knows who we are and they want to work with us. So first of all, there's perspective. It allows you to share your perspective in the way that you want to share it. Secondly, there's proximity. It allows you to get close to your prospect, even if they're on the other side of the world. The fact that someone is listening to you and has you in their earbuds when they're at the gym, when they are washing the dishes, when they are going for walks, it does something. It takes that know, like, and trust factor forward so much quicker. The amount of times I've had conversations with people who have been podcast listeners who are considering working with me, and they are quoting to me things that I've said. They're like, oh, I know you think this. I know your philosophy is this. I know it's that. I've never spoken to this person in my life, right? But they've spoken to me, or they feel like I've been speaking to them because they've been listening to the podcast. So you can get very close to people and they stay with you, right? Right now, attention spans, people don't have TikTok culture. People don't have time, but they do have time to listen to a half an hour, 40-minute podcast because they're doing it while they're doing something else often. And then the other thing is proof. It allows you to create proof of your expertise. We just published episode 293 of the podcast. So if I'm speaking to somebody, whether it's a potential client or it's a collaborator or it's someone that I want to speak on a stage for, I have a body of work that I can send them to that they can hear how I show up. They can hear my perspective, which feels very different from, say, reading a blog, right? And so you can send them to it. And sometimes when you're having conversations with people and they may have a particular challenge, you can say, hey, go and check out episode X of the podcast. They go away, they take action, they realize you're amazing without you actually having to do anything because you've already done the work up front. So share the philosophy, approach, and beliefs when it comes to your perspective. Really lean into allowing people to see who you are. What are your values? What is important to you? What is your coaching approach? Like, there's lots of different ways that we can approach coaching. What do you believe? What do you stand for? So that people have something there that they can connect with. So when you're doing your podcast episodes, you can infuse your content, like your education, with also your perspective. So sharing stories and anecdotes that are relevant to you as a person and your perspective and your profile. And then, as I said, proximity, you're building that sense of closeness and familiarity with your audience. And then the tangible evidence. And it's credibility. It's also consistency and expertise. If you're committing to creating a podcast, that means you've got stuff to say. That means you know your area of expertise. And even if you don't feel like you know it yet, the fact that you're going to have to go and research and prepare for your podcast means that it's going to help you to deepen your expertise, even just by showing up on a regular basis and producing this show. Okay? So as I'm sharing that, Put a yes in the chat if you are really, really thinking about starting a podcast in the next 6 months or so. Yes, yes, yes. No. Okay. I am. Excellent. We got yeses. Good, good, good. What I want you to know is that you can start sooner than you think. So sometimes you might be thinking, okay, I do want to start a podcast, but what am I even going to call it? What am I going to talk about? What is the subject matter? Who's even going to listen? How do I do the graphics? Like, you start getting into the how. But at this stage, I want you to just stay with the what. Like, am I actually going to do it? Am I making a commitment? Because as you start, that's when you come to realize more of what you need and how you're going to go about doing it. So I want to share with you a bit of a journey when it comes to my podcast. So there have been 3 iterations of this show. So I started back in 2017, 2018. And at the time when I was starting as a coach, as I mentioned, I was a lawyer. I wanted to demonstrate that I was more than a lawyer, right? I had my law thing going on, and then I had the coaching on the side. So I came up with the name More Than a Lawyer, and I started talking about what it looks like to be building something outside of your main profession. And so we started there back in 2017. I was recording, editing, doing the whole shebang myself and just figuring out what it was I was supposed to do. I reached out to people that I wanted to interview that I found were interesting and got them to agree to be on the show as my first guest. Then we moved forward and I started working with more people. And I realized that the more people I was working with as a coach, the more they mirrored where I was in my life. So I was at the stage where I had my first baby and I was figuring out how I'm navigating my legal career post motherhood. And so I then changed the podcast to Careers Beyond Motherhood because I wanted to attract more people that were like me, trying to navigate their careers post motherhood. So we had another shift with the podcast. And then we got to 2020, and 2020 is where it really started going. So we went 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. So first 4 years, I was just not really knowing what I was doing, just putting out episodes because I wanted to put out episodes. There wasn't much cohesion with my content, but I was doing it anyway. I was showing up and I was getting it out and I was slowly getting more listeners. And then in 2020, we rebranded to what it is right now, which is the Career Changemaker podcast. Most of my clients that were coming to me were looking to make some kind of career transition, whether that was a transition out to something else or a transition up to the next level. They were making a change in their careers. So we became the Career Changemaker podcast in 2020. And it was then that the podcast really started to take off. So I went from dabbling with one hosting platform to moving to the current hosting platform and really leaning into speaking to my ideal client every single week on the podcast, sharing tangible lessons around the mindset shifts they needed to have and the practical things they needed to do to change careers. And what I found was, what helped me so much with creating content that really landed was to use my existing client sessions and prospect conversations to inform my messaging. So I would have conversations with my clients and I would notice the patterns and I would note them down. I would have conversations with prospects and I would notice the things that they were challenged by or worried about, and I would note them down. And then I would go and record a podcast episode about it. So much so that clients would reach out and say, Janine, was that episode for me? Were you talking directly to me? I'm like, yeah, kind of was, but not. Because what I realized is if one client has that challenge, or if one prospect has that challenge, then other people like those people are also going to have that challenge. And those are the people I want to attract. So if I speak directly to them, when they listen to the podcast, they're going to say, oh, she knows exactly what I need. And so the more I did that, the more the podcast grew. And so you can see here, these are the numbers from 2020. So I had maybe about 40,000 downloads in the first few years. And then when I moved over to the current platform from February 2020, we've gone all the way up to 180,000 downloads on this platform. Okay, so over the years, the downloads have been going up incrementally, and we've got listeners from maybe like 112 countries around the world. And we have like regular people that reach out and say, I listened to this episode and it really helped me. But the most important thing is that I have had clients coming from this podcast. So I can probably attribute 6 figures of revenue coming from the podcast. And ultimately, people have heard what I have to say on here up front. Then they come into the sales call already warmed up. Like they already know what my philosophy is. They already know what, sometimes they know what the program is, but they know that I can help. And so the sales call is a much easier lift than when I'm speaking to someone that I've connected with on LinkedIn that doesn't listen to the podcast and hasn't been really indoctrinated into the way that I think, my methodology, my framework, my approach. So I literally had a call with someone the other day who became a client, and she said, I've been listening to your podcast for the last few years, and now that I have been made redundant or laid off, I thought of you. And so can you help me? And then, yes, she became a client, right? So what you're doing with the podcast is you're building that trust over time so that when your client needs you, they know that you're the person. So there's multiple things that I will say about having the podcast. So the client is the first thing. That's why, marketing tool, I wanted to do it to generate leads to ultimately lead to clients, and that happens. But the other thing is you get to connect with other people in your space, and you get to collaborate with other people in your space. So when you are reaching out to people and you are looking at ways that you can network and that you can grow your business, being able to say, hey, can we have a conversation and can I interview you for the podcast is a much easier conversation to initiate than, hey, can we just connect and have a chat? So there have been multiple occasions where I have connected with somebody just because I thought they were interesting, and down the line, an opportunity has come up, whether that is to speak on a stage, whether that is to deliver some corporate training, whether that is for me to go to an event or travel to a place that I've never been to because of the podcast. So it isn't just the clients that come in as a coaching client, but it's also around the visibility that you raise because you have a podcast and you're talking about it. And the long and the short of it is, if you're committed to doing a show on a regular cadence, people are like, okay, yeah, you're in this, right? Whatever your niche is, you are committed to it because you have created a whole show and a movement or an audience around this niche. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples, one from a one-to-one client and the other from a business connection that turned into revenue. So this is an example of a client called Maren. She's a recent client. So she's based in Sweden. I'm talking to you right now from Surrey. Like I'm sitting in my desk in my office in Surrey in the UK near London, right? She's from Sweden. She was listening to podcasts for a long time. She reached out and she booked a discovery call. So we got on the discovery call. I wanted to find out what was going on for her. She was looking to make a move in her career. She didn't know where she wanted to go. She just knew that she didn't want to be where she was right now. So initially she signed up for a 3-month career coaching program, and we worked together over that period of time. By the end of the 3-month program, what we realized is she wanted to actually start her own thing. She wanted to start her own business. So we ended that initial 3-month engagement. And then she said, I want to keep working with you, but can you help me with figuring out how to launch my business? And so now we're working together again for a business startup coaching program. Okay. So I'm showing you this because the path is very much some person that I never would have known was there, right? Listen to the podcast and it warmed her up enough to say, I absolutely want to work with you. And when we got on the discovery call, it wasn't I'm not sure. It was more, can you tell me what your programs are? Can you tell me what your rates are? If I can make it happen, let's go, let's start. And we got started. And I will tell you that the clients that come from the podcast are my absolute favorite clients to work with. Why? Because like I'm the type of person, if we're not laughing in our coaching sessions, like, yeah, it's not working for me, right? Obviously I hold space for people if they're going through stuff, but I like to have fun with my clients. And that comes across in the way that I speak and I share on my podcast. So the clients that come to me from the podcast, they align with certain of my values and the way that I vibe. So I enjoy working with them so much because they're already ready to work with a coach like me because I have created that space on the podcast. The other way, the other type of client that I've been able to connect with, these are like corporate opportunities. So the way that I've used the podcast for this is slightly different. So for the B2C clients, I go on the podcast and I share my perspective. I do solo episodes and I tell them the things I know they need to hear in order for them to work with me. I share my expertise, I share my approach, I share my framework. When I'm trying to attract corporate clients, I target people that I want to speak to that I think are really interesting, but that are also connected with businesses that I may want to work for or work with in the future. So this is Lauren. This is Lauren Curry. She has an OBE. She's amazing. She runs a company called Upfront. So we had connected in different online communities. Like I'd seen her around and I really admired the work that she was doing and how she was growing her business. So she talks a lot about confidence. So I invited her on the podcast to talk about confidence because it was a topic that would be relevant for my audience. And we recorded an awesome interview. It was fantastic. We had a great time. There were so many gems that she dropped on the interview. And then at the end of the interview, I just said to her, look, I love what it is that you've been doing. I love how you've been growing your business. If there is any way that I can support you, I'm here. Just let me know. And she said, great, thank you for letting me know. There might be some things that we can do in the future. Literally 1 week later, she reached out to me and said, do you know what? There's an opportunity that's come up for a bond coach, which is somebody to lead out in one of her group coaching programs. Would you be interested? And I was like, yeah, cool, let's do that, right? So I delivered on this 6-week bond experience. I didn't know when she said that there would be 3,000 people in this program. So she had 3,000 people in this program that I was then coaching on a weekly basis over the course of 6 weeks. After that first engagement, she was like, okay, the audience loved you, come back again. So now I have another 6-week engagement. But here's the thing, I got paid for that engagement. And off the back of that engagement, 2 people from her community have signed up for one-to-one coaching with me. That all stems from the podcast. If I had reached out to Lauren cold and said, hey, is there a way I can help you? She may not have responded in the way that she did. But in the interview with her, I made sure that I was sharing a bit of my background, sharing a bit of my expertise, having a conversation so that we were peers in the conversation. And then that positioned me for a potential opportunity. So if you are somebody who's considering, how can I get into corporate? How can I connect with people within organizations? Podcast is an absolutely fantastic way to do that because you get to get that person on a call for 30 minutes. Like most of the time when we're prospecting, we're trying to like, hey, can I get a call with you? You know, have you got time? If you are inviting someone on your show, you are offering them your platform, you get to speak to them for 30 to 40 minutes, you have established rapport. So after that, you can have a follow-up conversation. So these interviews have been golden. So when you look at my show, it's a combination of solo episodes and then also interview episodes. So it's a mix. And you can design your show however you want, right? You can do all solo episodes. You could do all interview episodes. It really depends on what your goal is, what type of client you're trying to attract. That's going to inform how you format the show and the cadence of your show. I have a weekly show. You could have one that you do twice a month. You could have monthly. I would say that's probably not as frequent enough when you're getting started, but you can decide on the cadence and you can decide on the format. And this is just an example of me going on and doing the bond coach experience. And then following from that, she had a book launch last week. So I went to the book launch. So starting from the podcast, I'm able to build connections with people in my industry that I know that are going to be helpful for me to have as peers and increasing my network. And then the other thing is exposure, right? So you connect with clients and then you also are collaborating, but the podcast also gives you exposure just more widely. So when you're thinking about your brand building and your visibility, you're showing up and your podcast is doing some heavy lifting for you in terms of getting you in rooms and getting you on other people's radars. So I didn't pitch for this, but the podcast, because it has been consistent, because it's been around for a while, we got featured in Apple's podcast, top 20 podcasts in the career moves category. And if you are in the career space and you look at some of these names in here are some of the biggest podcasts in the space, like Squiggly Careers, which is one of the podcasts that has like 5 million downloads. That is there. Work Life with Adam Grant, that is there. And my podcast is alongside those, right? So it's like, if you're committed to your space and you're showing up with your message or perspective consistently, you will get recognized by external publications and different platforms. It's been featured as #1 in the Good Pod charts time and time again for Career Change. That's an independent podcast chart. And this is all it's just done. Like I'm not pitching for this. And then there's a Max list, which is a top podcast, and it does a roundup every year of the top career podcasts in the space. And our podcast is featured for the last 3 years. Again, it wasn't something that I pitched. They just picked it up because they're seeing it on the podcast platforms. And then, of course, there's the feedback from your audience. So when you think about as a coach, I think most of us want to create impact, right? Type 1 in the chat if impact is one of the things that is important to you or one of the reasons that you are a coach. We've got some thumbs up. Yes. Got some head nods. Fantastic. So here's the thing. When it comes to who you could serve, there are some people that will never either be able to afford to work with you or aren't willing to invest in coaching, but they can listen to your show. They can listen to your advice and they can act on your advice and they can still get results. So what I love about the podcast is I see it as serving a community of people globally, some of which I will never speak to, some of which I will never meet, some of which I've never heard of. But the words that I am speaking on the microphone in this office will go forth for months and years to come as people get to listen to it at different points of their journeys, right? So you're creating this piece of content once that lives on and creates impacts for people time and time again. And when you compare that to things like social media, where it's like, okay, I have to post frequently, 3 times a week or daily, depending on what platform you're on, and the content that you're sharing, it's almost like you share it and then it's lost. Or you share it unless you're repurposing. Maybe you repurpose after 3 months or 6 months, but ultimately once it's there, it's gone, right? Whereas if you focus on long form, like a podcast or even a blog, that lives on and people get to experience it way into the future. I see someone's asked about effort resources. I'm gonna answer that more in the Q&A, but just to give you an idea of the simple setup, right? If you like baseline, if you just want to get started with your podcast, all you need is a microphone, you need a computer, laptop computer, you need some editing software, and you need a hosting platform. Microphone, computer, editing software, hosting platform. Microphone, I think my first microphone was like a cheap microphone off Amazon. The one I use now is a blue Yeti mic. It cost me about £100. I have my laptop anyway to do my work. I have a MacBook. The editing software that I used for many years was GarageBand, which comes with your Mac. If you're not using Mac, there's other alternatives that you can get for Windows, or there's online platforms you can use now. And hosting platform, I use a platform called Buzzsprout, super easy to use, cost me £13 a month to host my podcast. That's it. Like baseline. You can get fancy with it. There's lots of bells and whistles. There's lots of things you can do, but baseline, that's all you need. And if you're doing interviews with people, you also need Zoom, which you're probably using already for your client calls. So when you're thinking about like how much is the investment, if you're willing to edit it yourself, doesn't have to be a lot. But obviously, if you want to outsource the editing, then it can be a little bit more costly, but there are some really good deals that you can get with editing software, editing providers now. And there's also software that make it really easy with AI to edit pretty quickly too. So it doesn't have to be a lot. Some people go as far as, they hire a podcasting studio and a podcast producer and an editor and all of that. And you don't need to necessarily do that. Somebody asked a question about LinkedIn. What I will say is you can get really savvy with your content repurposing. So what I did for a long time, in order to get consistent with my podcast, I knew that doing video worked for me. So I actually did LinkedIn Lives on a weekly basis. And then I took the audio from my LinkedIn Live and then I put it on the podcast. And so for me, doing the LinkedIn Live and then stripping the audio to the podcast helped with my consistency in both places. So you can get creative about how you're fitting your podcast into your current workflow of what you've already been doing. Or you might have a library of videos, like if you've been YouTubing or you've been doing other things, you might already have content that you can use. If you've been blogging, then you might say, do you know what? I've got all of these blogs. What if I just took the blog and read what it is that I had to say, created a script from the blog, and then I recorded it? So if you've been doing any kind of marketing so far, you probably have what it takes to like get going with the podcast. Like you already have some scripts, you already have some content, you already have stuff that you can build upon. It doesn't have to be starting from scratch. And I know some of you might be thinking, based on the questions that you're asking, like this sounds like a lot of effort, either a lot of investment in time. It sounds like there's going to be a lot for me to do. Is it even worth it? Should I even do it? My answer to you is absolutely yes. But if you don't want to start with your own podcast, leverage someone else's. Leverage someone else's podcast. So what you do is you want to do this either way. You want to do this whether you have your own show or whether you haven't yet started your show, but you want to start guest podcasting. Podcasting. If you're a podcaster, as I am, you're always thinking about content. Like you're always thinking about what am I going to share on the next episode? Who am I going to interview? So if you have a message and something you want to share, start pitching people who already have podcasts to see if you can go on and share your perspective with them. And then what that does is it puts you in front of their audience, right? It puts you in front of their audience that they've already built, and you get on the show, you share your perspective, you share your links to your website, to your stuff, and now you are able to leverage their audience that they may well have been nurturing for a number of years. So if you only did pitching yourself to get on podcasts and started sharing your message, that's absolutely going to expand your reach and get you used to speaking on a podcast. So you could do that for a while, and then you can say, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to start my own show. So here's a couple of examples of shows I've been on. I can't even count how many shows I've been on at this point. Probably maybe around 40 shows over the last few years, where either people have come to me and said, can you be on the show? Or I've pitched them and said, hey, can we have a conversation about this? If you have your own show, you can do a swap. Say, hey, you come on my show, I'll come on your show. That's content for both of us. But what's great is that I can directly attribute certain clients that I have on my roster or I've had in the past to guest podcasting. So there's a client that I'm working with at the moment, and she found me on this podcast, the Midlife Career Rebel podcast. And I know that because when I do my intake form with them, I ask where they found me, and they say, hey, I heard you on Carol's podcast. I loved what you were talking about. And so I reached out for a call. So then you can track how these efforts are really translating into clients. It's like making sure you're asking people, where have you found me? And if it's on a podcast, which podcast? Then you know which shows are worth you doing more of and continuing. Question about how about LinkedIn? I use LinkedIn a lot in my business. So I do prospecting on LinkedIn. I do content on LinkedIn. I share the show on LinkedIn. So I share what I'm doing on the podcast on LinkedIn. That helps to increase the listeners of the show. It helps to solidify what my existing clients understand and know about the work that I do. And so LinkedIn and podcasting can work very well hand in hand. And like I said, you can leverage the different features of LinkedIn to feed into your podcast or vice versa. So when it comes to podcasting, you want to really be thinking about the fact that it gives you the opportunity to share your perspective in the way that you want to share it, and bring the uniqueness to the work that you do. And sometimes we can say, oh well, there's so many coaches that do what I do, but there isn't one other person who has your unique blend of background, experience, perspective, location. Like there's not one other coach who has your personality type and that has your unique blend of what you do. So you showing up and sharing it in the way that you share it means that the people that you're supposed to work with can know about you, can find out about you, can connect with you so they can work with you. The other thing I would want you to take away is learn as you go. Don't wait until everything's perfect or you understand everything about podcasting to get started. Get started and learn and make mistakes and develop and grow. That's the fastest path to you starting to get results. and start with guesting. I would encourage every single person on here to really think about, how can I start to leverage other people's platforms so that I can raise my visibility and do it quickly. And podcasting is low-hanging fruit, because if you're a host, you're always looking for people. So that is what I wanted to share. I want to have good time for questions. I'm going to scroll up and see if I can find the first one. But if you want to raise your hand and ask a question, you can also do that as well. What is the investment, effort, resources, time you need to begin podcasting? So just to answer on the time front, I will say, when you first get started, if you are doing the editing and everything yourself, you're probably gonna spend maybe about 3-4 hours a week on the podcast, on like producing the podcast, on getting it published, on doing your show notes, and then you will need time to be promoting your episodes and promoting the show. If you're outsourcing, I can record an episode in like less than an hour, and then I send it to my podcast editors to edit it, and then I have an assistant who helps me to put it on socials and on my website. So depending on what your team structure looks like, it could be a few hours for you a week if you do a weekly show, or it could be less than an hour. And then someone else asked, what actually helped you define your unique voice and niche in such a crowded space? My clients helped me. So the more I work with people, the more I come to realize where the patterns are. And the more I work with people and get feedback on what they found most useful about working with me, what they found most useful about my framework, then I'm able to be like, okay, so there's this aspect about my coaching approach that really resonates with people, or there's this aspect about what I say that resonates with people. And then that has helped to inform my messaging. So when I first started, I was like, okay, like, who should I help and what should I say? And it was really stressful trying to figure out what content am I going to create when I'm trying to do it from my own brain. But as soon as I was like, let my audience, let my people that I'm already helping and I'm already speaking to, let them help me help them, that's when it became so much easier. Someone says, am I looking for any guests? I have a button on my website for people to apply to be a guest, and then I have a whole process where I review guests and decide whether they are a good fit for my audience in terms of what they're sharing, and whether they fit within the schedule. So we kind of have our guests recorded way ahead of when we need to publish them. But yes, I do accept applications for guests on the show. Is this model university applied or unique to a specific location? It's universal. So when I look at the back end of my podcast analytics, so you can actually see where people are downloading from. It blows my mind. Like, how have I got somebody who's listening to the show in like Russia or in like Papua New Guinea or Costa Rica, and then people that are listening in the States and Australia and Germany, right? So people are listening to podcasts globally. And so you can start your podcast from wherever you are, and you will find your audience. And if your message is resonating, it's likely to resonate with people around the world, right? Given that you're a coach. So yes, it doesn't matter where you are. You can start where you are, and that's the beauty of it. If I think about my client base, I have had clients from all around the world, from Australia, all like Canada, from different parts of like Europe. They've all come from the podcast. They didn't come from like other sources. And so the reach is like, you can't control it, right? You put it out there and you see who it lands with. But it's wonderful. Like, I love that I get to connect with people from all around the world, and it's just from the same message, the same episode is going out, the same podcast is going out, and different people are able to engage. What's the biggest mistakes new podcasters make when they try to grow fast? I think one, you need to think about like your structure. So sometimes people would be like, right, I'm going to put out 2 episodes a week. I want this thing to grow, so I'm going to put out as much content as possible. But then you burn yourself out really fast. So I would say slow and steady is better. Like, I'm going to do once a week, and I'm going to make that content really as good as I can make it. and then build on that. And then the other thing I would say is people wait too long to get started. Like people are worried about things like the graphics. Like you can see the difference between my first graphic and what it is now. Like I just wanted to get it going and get out there. So I think as a new podcaster, worrying too much about the graphics, the website and all of that, it's like focus on the message, focus on the SEO with your show notes, because that's what's going to help people to find you. And make sure that you think about the name. I will say the name does matter. So part of the reason why you saw that growth curve from when I switched over to Career Changemaker podcast is because of the keyword in the title. So my first one, More Than a Lawyer, I was being cute. I was like, oh, I like that. More than a lawyer. I'm more than a lawyer. Let me call my podcast More Than a Lawyer. But who's searching for that? No one's searching for that. But Career Changemaker, if you put career change into Apple Podcasts or Spotify, my podcast comes up because so many people want to know about career change. So, you know, if you are in the business space, in the fitness space, in the wellness space, think about what specifically am I helping people with and how can I weave that into my title so that the podcast can be found more easier. I've got, how long should a podcast be? It depends. It really depends. A podcast episode could go from as short as 5 minutes all the way to like an hour and a half. Like I know some people that have like really long podcasts. Normally that's, you know, high profile celebrities that are doing these long interviews. But I would say the podcast episode needs to be as long as it needs to be in order for you to get your message across. So most of my solo episodes range between 10 and 18 minutes. But yeah, it's not about making it long for long's sake. We have to be mindful as to like how long does your type of audience have, how long are they likely to engage, and it might be that you test it, like you put it out, you see, you ask people for feedback, and you do it like that. Let me ask, is it Baber? You got your hand up, do you want to unmute?
Yes, thank you, Janine, and thank you for a very nice and informative session. I have a couple of questions. I can share them one by one.
Yeah, sure.
So, first question is about your transition from a lawyer to a coach.
Mm-hmm.
How long was the overlapping period, and how long was the transition?
Yeah. So I qualified as a lawyer in 2012, sorry, qualified as in 2012. And I did my first coaching certification in 2014. I actually started figuring out how to build a business in 2016. So I would probably count it from 2016. And then I was doing both until 2021.
Okay.
So like 5 years, I was doing both, but that was my choice because I enjoyed having a portfolio career. I really liked the lawyering side of things and the part of my brain I had to use for that. And I really enjoyed the, you know, the coaching and the helping people. The reason I ended up transitioning full-time into coaching was COVID. And I was, you know, I was working part-time as legal counsel for a startup, had coaching clients at lunchtime, and then I had 2 kids that are at home homeschooling because of COVID. And my brain was like, I can't cope. They were asking me about snacks and Zoom. And my MD was like, can you get that contract out? And my coaching clients were waiting for me. And I was just like, yeah, this is a lot. So at that point, I was like, okay, I have to pick. I can't wear all of these hats now. And so that's when I decided to go full-time in the business. And then I went from just coaching in the business mainly to then doing more speaking and facilitation and working with more corporate clients because I had capacity for that at that point.
Yes, thank you for answering. My second question, I won't take a lot of time, but the second question is about the podcasting. When did you start it, or did you start right from podcasting, or you tried other channels also?
I started blogging a little bit, but I didn't get very far with that. I built my own website and then I started blogging. And then shortly after, like maybe after a couple of months, I was like, actually, I want to try podcasting. And then when I tried podcasting, I just really enjoyed the format of it. I enjoyed the fact that it allowed me to connect with people so easily. In terms of, you know, reaching out to people and saying, hey, you don't know me, I know you, I think you're amazing, let's have a conversation on the podcast. And then I saw clients coming from it. And so, yeah, it was, for me, it was like a no-brainer to continue with the podcast. But as I say, it's not the only thing that I do. So I do use LinkedIn as well in my business as marketing. I was using Instagram for a while, but I'm not on that as much anymore. But when I look at the numbers and like where are the clients coming from, most of my clients have come from the podcast, my one-to-one coaching clients. And my group, I had a group coaching program for 4 years. And like I would say 90% of the people that came through that program, there's about 60 odd people that went through the program over the time. 90% of those came from the podcast.
Thank you very much for your answers. Much appreciated.
My pleasure. Thank you. I saw someone else had their hand up, but they disappeared off the screen. Let me see if there's any more in the chat.
Yes, we have Kasim Reza. As a podcasting, what are the pros and cons?
I would say it can be time consuming in terms of a con. You can be spending a lot of time to produce one episode, but I see that as an investment of time because that episode can be used again and again, repurposed. You can take quotes from your episode for social media. You can refer people to it. So it can be time consuming. That's probably the only con I can think of. The pros, like I mentioned before, is like it raises your visibility massively. Like I've actually had speaking engagements because of the podcast, because I was doing a live stream that I wanted to put onto the podcast, and someone on LinkedIn saw the live stream, liked what I talked about and how I engaged, and then they invited me to talk on a stage. So I think if you're trying to build out a business that has different streams and like speaking is part of that, your podcast is helping you to refine your voice, your message, and get used to just sharing. Because, you know, when you get interviewed on a podcast, whilst you can work with the host to come up with, you know, what questions are you going to ask me, sometimes the conversation just flows and you have to get used to just like off the top of your head sharing your perspective. And the more you do that, the easier it gets. And then the easier it gets, the more comfortable you are on stage. And so, yeah, I can't think of many cons, if I'm honest. What is the software used for podcasts? There's different software. I used GarageBand for editing, and then I use Buzzsprout for my hosting. And there are different hosting platforms. Now we also use Riverside to help us with our interview, because you can interview people on Riverside, you can record on Riverside, and then you can do light editing on Riverside, and I like that as well. So as I said, there's basic software, and then you can get a little bit more complicated, but I would say start basic and then figure out what you need for your workflow before you go and invest in more expensive software, because it's not only a money investment, it's a time investment to figure out how do I even use this tool. And so you just have to ask yourself, do I need to make that time investment now to figure out how to use it, or can I use something more basic just to get going? Other question here. I'm just starting my coaching journey, so this may be an obvious one for many here, but knowing that coaching is client-led and not based on the coach proposing solutions and ideas, can you speak more about how this fits with the dynamic of podcasting, where you probably need to share your opinions? Yeah, so when it comes to coaching approaches, there's different coaching approaches for different circumstances. So there's like the pure coaching where you are just holding space for your client and they are coming up with the answers. In some circumstances, there's coaching where you can be a bit more directive. So for example, if you're helping someone with their careers and you're trying to share with them a strategy or a way to go, that can be more directive. But when it comes to sharing, even if you are holding space for people, you're still, as a coach, understanding the types of limiting beliefs, mindset challenges, perspectives that your clients have. So you might have a podcast that is more focused on highlighting some of the beliefs that people tend to have in this area and helping to shift the belief, or offering reframes in the way that you are sharing your content. So you might not be like, hey, on this episode, do da 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 da, but you might say, okay, clients who are facing this particular challenge, often here's some of the obstacles they face. And then what that does for the client is it helps them to, or the potential client, it helps them to know that you are a coach that understands where they're coming from. So you kind of meet them where they are in terms of where their headspace is at, And you know that because you've worked with a lot of clients who have a similar challenge. So your podcast is about highlighting your understanding of the niche, the space, the client, and what their challenges are. And then people are like, oh, she gets me. Like, I want to work with her. And then when you coach them, you can hold that space for them. So you can have a framework that you develop over time. You're just starting out, right? So it takes a while for you to figure out where the patterns are. But when you've been coaching people for years, you're like, okay, yeah, I pretty much know what's going to happen next. And so that's when you start to develop a framework and say, hold on, I've worked with 10 clients. For every client that I've worked with, we have covered this, this, and this. And now this is what is going to be the format for my framework. So you don't jump to the framework first, you kind of work with the client so that can help you to develop the framework. And in terms of sharing your opinions, you're a coach, you can still share your opinions about like you and things that you're interested in. It could be as silly as like, I like chocolate, I love to eat chocolate. And then I'll speak to a client, they'll be like, I love chocolate too. Like, we're dealing with humans, right? And business is all about like human to human connection. So sometimes if someone has two coaches in front of them and they're like, should I choose this coach or this coach? It could be as simple as this person has a dog and I have a dog, or they have kids and I have kids, so they understand me. So you just sharing a little bit about who you are as a person, it means that people have something other than what you do to hold on to, because coaching is it's a very dynamic relationship, right? You get very intimate with your clients. Sometimes your clients will tell you things they would not tell anyone else. Sometimes you hold space and someone is crying in front of you and they have never cried with anyone else. So given that, you want to make sure that you're showing your humanity as well. Like, you're showing who you are as the vessel who is now creating this container for them to be able to show up and be open, you know? What would you say are the top 3 things that make a podcast worth subscribing to? Oh, that's a good question. I would say a podcast that makes it clear what people can expect. So, you know, you can have multiple interests, but like your podcast needs to be about something. So when someone comes to your podcast, they know like, okay, this is for me to get help on this thing, or support or perspective or storytelling on this thing. If people know what to expect, then they can subscribe and say, yeah, I'm coming back for more. I think consistency, people need to know that you're going to be there. Like, if I listen to your show today and I'm loving it, and then I go back next week, the week after, and there's nothing, then I might just be like, okay, I'm going to find someone else to listen to. So I would say those are probably like the top 2 things. And then maybe it is keeping it interesting. So making sure that what you are sharing is not just what you're interested in sharing, but actually what your audience is interested to listen to. Hosting platform, again, that's Buzzsprout. And yeah, there's links in there to connect with me on LinkedIn. If you have other questions, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Someone asked us what's SEO. I talk fast. SEO, so search engine optimization. So whenever you are writing anything on your website, so your show notes, that is a written version or a written summary of what you talked about, you want to use the types of keywords that your client might be searching for, so that over time your website and your posts can come up in Google, so that, yeah, people can find what it is that you've been sharing. I think those are all the questions. Yeah, right on time. Those are all the questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Janine, for the wonderful insights. It was a pleasure having you with us today. And all the wonderful people who have joined us today, I am so glad to have you all here. And I'm sure to see you all next on the 21st of October in our next Transformational Talks. Wishing you all the best.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you very much.